Well, hey there. Something funky is going on with my audio. All right. Did I solve it? Hang on 1 second. I think it may be time to get a new XLR cable for my microphone. Woohoo! This is how we're starting off the broadcast because I've been trying to set up for the past 20 minutes here and I was hearing a high pitched squeal in my headphones coming. It seemed that it was coming from my audio interface and digital recorder, and I was trying to figure out where it was coming from. I was moving it around, plugging it, unplugging it, turning it off, turning it on, plugging it into a different port, moving the location, listening for whether it was a high pitched squeal that existed somewhere in my ecosystem that my microphone was picking up. Is it the construction noises outside? Like, what is happening? I've never heard this particular high frequency. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just me hearing it, but it's not actually in the recording. So if I can suffer through it for this next recording session, then it'll be totally fine. And I can just suffer through it, but it's not going to affect the recording quality. It's not going to affect the live stream. However, I did a recording test and it was absolutely 100% in the audio, this high pitched squeal, which we could probably take out after the fact, but then this live stream would be super annoying and there would be no point in streaming, in which case I could just abort the mission and come back and record when things are better. Because sometimes when you have a tech issue, I don't know if this happens for you, but for me, sometimes when I have a tech issue, I give up and I walk away and shut everything down. Well, I shut everything down and then I walk away. And then when I come back, everything is magically fixed. I don't know. Has that ever happened for you? It definitely happens for me. So I was monkeying around, and what I came to realize is that when I jiggled my XLR cable in my microphone, see, said, oops, how do I do this so that it actually goes in there? XLR cable. When I do that, I could increase or decrease that high pitched squeal. And so, therefore, I cannot move my microphone closer to my face like I normally do. I have to adjust my recording angle. So, you're seeing a slightly different version, slightly different angle of my space, and you're seeing more of my calendar. So, I hope that's entertaining for you. But at least we are not getting that high pitched squeal. What I do want to do is stick this memory card in here and hit record here. All right, now that we have that out of the way, thank you so much for tuning in to this video. I hope you haven't tuned out hearing of my tech woes and my very, very, very skillful troubleshooting, which, this is part of what we do. Tech troubleshooting is not my favorite part of podcasting. It's not my favorite part of being a producer, but it is a thing. And I'm glad that a high percentage of the time I can come up with a solution. And if I can't, I have our technical director on our team, Edwin Ruiz, who can definitely come up with a solution. And if between the two of us we can't come up with a solution, then, well, there's no solution to be had. I'm that confident. In any case, that is not what today's video and stream and episode is about. Today we are going to be talking about something a little bit controversial, a little bit uncomfortable, maybe, and that is some language that I have found myself using as of late that I would like to stop using. And it relates to you as a podcaster because I am kindly suggesting that you also consider stop using this language. All right. Let's get into it. Also, I don't usually live stream at 10 a.m. I know that may not seem early for some of you, but it's early for me. I am definitely much more vocally warmed up later in the day. And my voice, I did some vocal warm-ups this morning because I didn't talk to anybody before recording, which is usually the best way to warm up your voice, is to have some conversations, talk to some people before recording your episode, especially if you're recording in the morning. Well, I didn't have anyone to talk to this morning, so I did some singing vocal warm-ups, and I thought I was in pretty good shape, but now as I'm listening in my headphones, I'm like, ugh, this is not my best podcasting voice. But you know what? We're just gonna roll with it. It's fine. And then if I hate it and I really want to re-record it later, I will. All right, let's see here. Let me bring up my notes. And if you are watching the replay of this live stream, I would love to invite you to comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree, you disagree, if you think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Are you using this language? Would you like to stop using this language? Do you think this language is totally fine to use? Nothing wrong whatsoever. I am very curious. So feel free to comment on this stream or send me a message. You can email me, Andrea at thecreativeimposter.com. There it is, Andrea at thecreativeimposter.com. Send me an email, send me voice feedback, and maybe I'll play it on a future episode of Podcast Envy. So what you're about to hear is going to be an episode of Podcast Envy. This is going to be probably episode 109. Oh, see, there's that morning voice. Ugh, this is why we have to do vocal warm-ups, people, and apparently more than what I did this morning. So this is going to be Podcast Envy episode 109. You'll be able to hear the edited version without me complaining about my voice at podcastenvy.com when it releases, which is going to be in 3 Thursdays from now. So not tomorrow, not the next week, not the next week, the next week. I don't remember what date that is. That will be when this Podcast Envy episode goes live. There will be one in between what's out there now and this one. And that one will be all about why social media is not working for your podcast and how to fix it. And that will be with my colleague and collaborator, Lauren Ramsey from Betsy Bash Social Media Agency based in Chicago. And it's going to be super fun. However, this episode is, my notes are queued and ready to go right now. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss. I don't like the way that sounds. My voice is killing me. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. Okay, I have a confession to make, and that is that I have a problem. There is a word that I have started using. I have adopted it into my language, into my vocabulary, and I am very disturbed and ashamed. And it's not a word that I want to be using ever, or at least not as much as I have been as of late. And that is, well, if you looked at the title of the episode, you already know. It's the C word. Gasp. I have lately been talking about content. What? Not the C word you were expecting? Oh, content. Content creator, content creation, create content. You know, recently I was in New York City working for a client on their show, Key Change. And I was walking down the street in the Broadway Theater District in the evening on my way home from recording. And this group of lively, energetic, excited 20-something-year-old guys was walking down the street just a few paces ahead of me. And they were like totally high on the New York life, as one typically is on a weekend in New York City when you don't live there. And they were just like in their element. And I was overhearing part of their conversation, and they were like, dude, New York is so awesome. Like, we're totally going to live here. Oh my God. Yeah, we're going to become content creators and get a loft and live downtown, and it's going to be lit. Now, I'm not making this up, and I am not exaggerating. That is literally what they said. And it is burned into my mind in that moment, not because, these 20-year-old guys weren't necessarily all that remarkable, and not because it had anything to do with me, not because of anything special about their conversation, but it became burned into my mind because in that moment, I suddenly transformed. I transformed into this curmudgeonly, bitter old lady who was like, content creator, yeah, let's just see. Let's see how you're going to make it big and get rich on being a content creator. Awesome future career aspiration, like getting a loft in New York City and having all these parties. Do you have any idea how much that costs? Yeah, good luck with that. And so my age, my biases, my life experience, my bitterness, it was all here. Fortunately, in my head, fortunately, I have not yet lost that filter. So none of this was shared with this group. I just let them ride out their high and their weekend and enjoy life and just live their best life. That was fine. But this, my dear podcaster, is not a story about life in your 20s versus life in your 40s. This is not even a story about the Big Apple. This is a story about the problem with the word content for you as a podcaster. The problem with the word content is it's like saying, I'm trying to fill a container. The contents of this container are X. I'm trying to fill a space, a void with stuff, with content. The contents of this pillow are polyfill fiber. And the contents of this pillow are polyfill fiber, 100% polyfill fiber. Wah, wah. Nobody needs more polyfill fiber in their life unless you are making inexpensive decorative throw pillows. The point is that in this current climate, in the podcasting industry, not even in the podcast industry, because I don't think that I necessarily serve the podcast industry. I serve business owners, thought leaders in their respective niches, in their industries, in their fields, in their organizations to use the medium of podcasting towards whatever their higher purpose or goal is. So it's not the industry that I'm feeding of podcasting. It is those creative individuals who want to use the medium, to use the platform, to use this online space to make a positive difference. And this whole space, the industry, the medium, the platform, whatever angle you're coming to it from, is getting more competitive day by day. I mean, you could probably say that about just about any industry or niche, but I see it because I'm right here in podcasting with you. Gone are the days where you could be the first woman to launch a small business advice podcast and then right away shoot to the top of the Apple charts because you are literally the first and the only podcast in that particular niche. That was a thing many years ago. It's not now. It is not a record it, publish it on Apple Podcasts or, God forbid, Spotify, and they will come. It is not that. It is not make an audiogram, post it on Instagram, and suddenly you're going to double your podcast listenership. That is not the game that we are playing right now. And I would say that if you are into creating a podcast, probably for any purpose, like It's different if you're creating a podcast to gain a large audience to be able to sell advertising and get sponsors. That's one game. It's different if you're using a podcast to promote a business, a product, or a service that you have. That's another game. It's different if you're using a podcast as an educational and community building outreach arm of your nonprofit organization. That's another game. There's all these different games and these different ways that you can use the medium that have nothing to do with the industry necessarily of podcasting for good, for you, for your purposes, that you can use this platform to create these genuine, intimate, meaningful conversations with your listeners. Even if they're just listening and they're not actually talking back to you, you are creating meaningful change in their life. You are providing them something that they don't get anywhere else. However, they need to be able to find you. And once they find you, you need to be able to capture and hold their attention long enough to build that relationship. They don't have a relationship with you the first 3 words that come out of your mouth, unless they knew you previously, which, a lot of our listeners do know us. And then a lot of our listeners don't. They just know what they hear on the podcast, and they build that parasocial relationship with you episode after episode after episode, time and time goes by. That relationship gets deeper. That connection is more meaningful, and their connection to your brand becomes stronger and stronger, but it takes time. I think I'm going on a tangent right here. That's fine. Let me check my notes. Oh, so basically what I was saying is gone are the days where you could be a super successful, creative, independent podcast creator who does not have a major media network behind you, like, I don't know, Spotify, like Amazon, like Audible, which is Amazon, like Condé Nast. Does Condé Nast have podcasts? I don't even know. But Slate, Vulture Media, some kind of media network behind you that has advertising dollars, that has an entire team, that has social media people who just promote the heck out of your show. And all you have to do is show up, make your show, and make it something that people want to come back to over and over again. Those days are gone where you can be that indie creator and stick with it and learn as you go, create your content with consistent, reliable, reasonable consistency. That's redundant. And be able to reasonably and reliably, with effort and creativity and a little bit of luck, get the visibility that you need to have a massive influx of followers and listeners drop into your show. This is no longer reality for us indie creators. And notice I didn't say the other word, the other C word in this moment, because in my humble opinion, from what I have seen over 7 years in this space, content for the sake of content is not going to cut it. And you know what I mean when I say content for the sake of content. I've got to get an episode out. My guest canceled. What am I going to do? What is this episode going to be about? We could talk about this. We could talk about that. We could talk about this. We'd have this person on the show. I got to record something. I have to take that recording and chop it up into content for social media. I need more content for TikTok. I need more content for my new LinkedIn newsletter. Content. What we need to be looking at right now in order to differentiate your show, in order to make your podcast something that stands out from the rest that is out there, that makes your show the one of many, many, many choices your ideal listener has to choose from, is that your podcast needs to not just be a source of good quality Your podcast needs to be not just a source of great quality information. Your podcast does not just need to be a casual conversation with a compelling guest. Your podcast must also fill another purpose in the context of your listener's day. And it is most likely that if you have been listening to Podcast Envy at all over the last If you have been listening to Podcast Envy at all over the past couple of months, you already know what that purpose is. And that purpose generally has something to do with entertainment. Your show should be entertaining. And if you're saying, well, I have an advice show where I help people with their problems. I'm helping people. Do I really need to think about being entertaining while I'm helping people? Yes, because if you do it in an entertaining way, people will listen more closely and be able to digest that information and embody it and take it into the cells of their being if it is entertaining. I've heard it said that humans are creatures of story. When we hear a story about something, we are much more likely to learn it than if we are given a PowerPoint presentation or a Google Slides presentation with bullet points. You are going to remember a story more than you are going to remember bullet points on a slide deck. Am I right? Or am I right? Sure. For your listener, you could be filling some kind of void for them. And in that case, it should be the thing that makes them feel better when they're lost or confused or feeling alone. It's the show that makes them feel confident when they need to make a big decision about something specific that you can help them make that big decision with, even if you don't know what big decision it is that they are actually making. The reason they are going to choose your show for that purpose is not the quality of the information. It's not even the content. The reason they are going to choose your show above all others is production value. What? Also not what you were expecting me to say. All right, production value. You may or may not know this about me, but I come from a theater background. I also have a music and singing background, and I also have dabbled in film production. That's what I studied in college, film and video and broadcast media. And in all of these arenas, all of these creative pursuits, creative, generative, and in many cases, media making pursuits, production value is a thing that we study and comes into play. People describe production value in a lot of different ways and include or don't include certain things into that just based on their perspective, I guess. I don't know, because I even thought to myself, let me look up a few definitions of production value. And in some cases, the definitions that I found are it is everything technical on a stage during a play. So it's not necessarily the actors or the script even, or the director's vision. It's not the direction, it's not the script, it's not the performers, but it is the lighting. It is the sets. It is the costumes. It is if there's any kind of like sound cues or special effects like fog or anything like that. It's the props. It's all of those things that goes into the world, the experience of the play. The content, if you will, is the story. The content is the script. The content are the lines that are coming out of the performers' mouths. That's the content. And yes, bad content, bad story, bad scripting, bad writing, that can severely affect a show, and you could have very high, expensive, high budget production value. It could look beautiful and the content could still be crap. And some people are going to be like, oh my God, that was the worst script ever. What was even the story? And some people are still going to be wrapped up in the experience. I definitely had this experience in New York. Look, maybe this is a podcast about New York. One of my first experiences in New York City is when I believe it was when I was there to perform in the New York Fringe Festival. And I was staying with a friend who lived there. And she was like, we need to go see something on Broadway. And I was like, maybe this or this. And she was like, no, we need to see something that is spectacle. We need to see something that is like so entertaining and just like fluffy and beautiful and just like big Broadway. We need to see big Broadway. I was like, okay. And so she picked, oh gosh, why is it? Oh, she picked Andrew Lloyd Webber's Bombay Dreams. Have you ever heard of it? A lot of people have never heard of this show. Why? Because the show itself wasn't very good. Like the script wasn't great. The songs don't really, they weren't earwormy the way that other Broadway songs can be. So they didn't really stick in your mind. The characters weren't well developed. You know, that part of it was kind of flat. But Bombay Dreams was set in India, and the sets and the costumes were like colorful and flowy fabrics. And at the end of the first act, before the intermission, a giant fountain, water fountain, emerged from the stage, and water was like spraying everywhere while the dancers in their colorful saris and silks were swirling and swirling and swirling around. And I was like, this is the most incredible thing ever. I can't remember the name of the characters. I can't remember what happened. It was some kind of love story. I don't know. But that scene is forever burned into my mind as this really incredible experience. Now, don't get me wrong. So that was production value. That had nothing to do with the content. That was production value. Don't get me wrong. I am not suggesting that you don't take care into the content that is in your show. I am not suggesting that you don't think about what it is that you're saying, that you don't think about how you script things, that you don't think about language, that you don't think about conversations, that you don't think about guests, that you don't think about what is actually being said or shared in your show. Of course, that is so important to me. I think that you probably already do a pretty good job about that. What I am saying is, where can you increase the production value? And that is the elements that go into the experience that your audience is having in that moment when they are listening to your show. So if you have ever gone to a play versus a staged reading. Have you ever gone, or even not a staged reading, let's say a reading of a new play, a reading of a new script, where actors have the script, it's new, and they are reading the script, but there's no costumes, there's no lighting, there's no sets, there's no props or whatever. It can still be a valuable experience. You can still have a great play, a great story. It can still be well acted by the actors, but the overall packaging of the experience of the full play, that's what we want. We don't want a reading. We want the whole experience. So you might be thinking, well, how does this apply to podcasting? Because basically you're doing a reading. You're just sitting here and you're reading your script or you're reading your notes, and it's just words coming out of your mouth. Like, there's no production value here. Wrong. That is not the case. In podcasting, production value can come from so many different places. It is the technology. It is what is the audio quality as the listener is listening. Are you using equipment and using it in such a way that their listening experience is going to be high? How is the show being edited? Do you have an editor, or are you yourself editing the content so that it can be followed easily and digested easily and be a wonderful experience for your listener to consume without them having to do too much work or leap through obstacles or draw conclusions on their own? Are you including music? In this live stream, I'm not including music, but in the episode itself, there will be the theme music. There will be music for the Angel section. The podcast Angel section is where I give you a promo for something that I think you could add to your podcasting experience that is going to make it more amazing and that helps sustain me, this show, and my business. So there's music for the Angel. Then if I include another special feature, like I've been including special features for social media tips with Lauren Ramsey from Betsy Bash, my collaborator on a service that we call the Creative Bash, maybe this is a good time for a Podcast Angel segment. Well, that has its own music that I have selected. So that can be part of your production value. Also, the way you deliver the content. Some people are going to argue that that's not really production value. I disagree. I think that intentionally including humor, intentionally including stories and examples to illustrate a point, I think the way you use your voice as the podcaster, all of that to me, if I were auditing your show, if I were assessing your show like I do in the Podcast Envy Refresh, I would be listening for how you show up on the mic, how you use your voice, how you illustrate your points, how you help your listener to take in the experience of your show in a way that is entertaining, in a way that resonates with them, in a way that helps them utilize this energy, utilize this information, utilize what it is that you are trying to share with them or teach them or offer them, how to make it really soak into their pores and stick with them. That is all part of podcast production value, in my opinion. So again, the difference between having a reading of the script, a reading of what it is that you want to share, a reading of the content, and a fully staged, fully realized play, that with the sets and the lights and the costumes, that is what turns content, even good content, into magic, into life-changing moments and emotional breakthroughs for your audience. And if your podcast is not doing that for your audience, you're missing a golden opportunity, because the production value, how do I want to say that? If your podcast is not doing that for your audience, you're missing a golden opportunity, and your show likely fades into the background. Maybe they follow your show and the new episodes show up in their queue every week or every other week, but it's not the first one they click on. And maybe 3 days later, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to Podcast Envy. And then they choose something else, or they go watch Netflix. Does Netflix call their shows content? Do you watch content on Netflix? Even those like sad little documentaries that Netflix loves to pop out that they don't even call those. You know what I mean? The sad documentaries, the ones that aren't that good, the ones that aren't that in depth, where it's like, I don't know. It's like primetime television back when we were doing the whole network broadcast thing, where it's like pretty inexpensive to produce. You feel like you're learning something, but it's just fluff. They don't call those content. They call those documentaries. They call those shows. So why are we calling what we're creating content? I don't want your episodes to be the ones that people see in their feed or in the app or on social media, and they are like, I should probably listen to that. But they don't, because it's just more content. Nobody needs more polyfill fiber. All right. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, Andrea, production value, I don't know. I'm not a producer. I'm not a theater person. I'm not an actor. I'm not a media mogul. What does production value even mean? How do I put this into my show? Is this really something? I'm a coach. I'm a consultant. I'm a service provider. I'm a small business owner. I'm a therapist. I don't have a big budget. Production value does not necessarily require a big budget. You do not need to spend hundreds of dollars licensing a song off the radio. You do not even need to spend $1,000 on your podcasting gear setup. You do not necessarily need to have some kind of splashy video that you're posting online. There are other more cost-effective ways to think about production value and to explore how you can authentically implement these elements into your show to create an entertaining and enjoyable experience to go along with the educational content that you are providing. And this thinking, this exploration, these ways of crafting the message that you are going to share, this is what elevates your podcast from content to a show. So what do you think? I'm curious to know. Please feel free to comment. Please feel free to email me, Andrea@thecreativeimposter.com. Once again, there's that email. And look for this final episode in Podcast Envy in a few weeks, or listen to any episode of Podcast Envy, really, because you will see what I mean by production value. And I'm not doing anything terribly fancy with Podcast Envy. I have other shows that I produce for clients, like Key Change. I mentioned working on Key Change in New York, where sometimes we have ambient sound recording in there. Sometimes we have a lot of music cues. We have a lot of different interviews that we've stitched together. I'm thinking about how the voices complement one another, etc. We have another podcast called Encounter Culture from the New Mexico Department of Cultural Affairs. And we have a season that's coming out that has so much production value. It's probably one of the highest production value shows I've ever worked on. And yeah, that was expensive to produce. Not gonna lie. So there are a variety of different ways that you can implement this into what you're creating, into your show. And let me record my Podcast Angel segment right now, because why not? Podcast Angels are those products, services, experiences, things that you can implement into your podcasting experience as a creator, not a content creator, a creator, that make your effectiveness, that make your enjoyment of what you're doing, that make your process so much more effective and so much more better. And this episode's Podcast Angel is me. The Podcast Envy Refresh is for you if you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling stagnant, if you feel like your show has lost that magical glow for you or for your listeners, if it's not growing, if you're not sure if you want to keep doing this over and over again. Don't give up yet. Let's do a Podcast Envy refresh in which I will meet with you to see what your goals, what your visions are, what it is that you want for your show and your community and your brand. And then I'm going to deep dive into what you've created. I'm going to look at everything. I don't even like deep dive. I want to cut that out of my vocabulary too. Then I am going to, what am I going to do? If I'm not going to deep dive into your show, then I am going to dig in. I would rather dig in than dive in. Would I? No, digging's hard work. Then I am going to listen to your show. I am going to look at how you show up online and on social media and see where the golden opportunities are you for a refresh. That is available for you for a limited time at a special price this summer, 2023. And you can find out if it's a good fit for you when you book a tea date with me online. And you don't have to drink tea. You can drink coffee, you can drink water, you can have a smoothie, you can have a cocktail for all I care. That's at thecreativeimposter.com/T420. Thecreativeimposter.com/T420. That's where you can book a tea date with me. And let me know that you're interested in learning more about the Podcast Envy refresh and whether that might be right for you and your show. Also, Podcast Angel number 2 is coming up oh so quickly. And I actually need to look this up real quick. It is... the next Podcast Envy Masterclass. This is an online masterclass. It is one action-packed hour with me and Lauren Ramsey from Betsy Bash. And this is all about how to grow your podcast like a social media influencer. Thursday, June 29th at 11 a.m. Central. You can get the link to sign up in the show notes for this episode. And that is thecreativeimposter.com/masterclasses. So if you go to thecreativeimposter.com/masterclasses and then on Eventbrite, use the promo code VIP invite. VIP invite is going to give you 50% off your masterclass seat. And the greatest part about this is that you will be able to send in your questions ahead of time so that we are sure to answer them during the class. And then we'll have a Q&A period. So if any new questions have come up in that moment, you'll be able to ask them live and we'll be able to work through them with you. So how to grow your podcast like a social media influencer. That is the class. And this was actually requested by a client that we were working with on her show during the Creative Bash, which is a service where you get not just my podcasting brain, you also get Lauren's social media brain on your content to see how you can better sync your social and your show. So she was saying that really what needed to shift for her was the mindset of thinking like an influencer. She was saying that using social media is fine, but like thinking about how to use it more strategically like a successful influencer. Like, I don't know if you know this, but successful influencers don't just like throw spaghetti at the wall necessarily and post whatever. They know what works. They know what generates new followers. They know what gets engagement. And that's what they use. And so this is what we're digging into the mindset of how to use your social media more strategically in a way that is still aligned with you, your personality, and your brand. And so that once again is Thursday, June 29th at 11 a.m. Central on Zoom. You can participate from anywhere. And the link to sign up is thecreativeimposter.com/masterclasses, promo code VIP invite for 50% off. See you there. All right, so that wraps up my Podcast Angel segments. Those will be offset with music, production value. All of this will get edited so that will appear more in the middle of the episode. And these are the kinds of creative choices that you can make that increase the value of your show. That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for those who tuned in live. Thank you for watching the replay if you're watching the replay. And thank you for listening to the edited episode later at podcastenvy.com. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.